With the introduction of Link Monsters Yu-Gi-Oh!, we've had cards released that have broken boundaries to show just how powerful this new summoning mechanic can be. But for every absolutely broken Link monster we have one that's not so much. Today we are going to be talking about one of the worst Link monsters released in Yu-Gi-Oh!, but the worst Link monster in Yu-Gi-Oh! Still happens to be rather good. Let's talk about it. What's up, guys? It's Gage. You may remember my face when I uploaded for Doug, I think like a month ago or something like that. Well, Doug's on vacation now, so I'm filling in for him today. And today we are going to be talking about Clara and Rushka, the Ventriloduo, one of the worst Link monsters ever released. But we're not just going to be bashing on Clara and Rushka. As fun as that may be, we're actually going to be looking at the positives of Clara and Rushka, and there actually is surprisingly a lot of them. This is sort of going to be like a segment that I do over on my channel called This Awful Yu-Gi-Oh! Card Was Good, where we take a look at cards that are absolutely and abysmal objectively and on paper, but in the long run, they actually have some playability. Clara and Rushka just happens to fit that bill to a T, but to understand why, let's first address its effect and what exactly it does. Clara and Rushka is an Earth spellcaster Link monster with 0 attack. It is a Link 1 with a top arrow pointing, and it requires 1 normal summoned or set monster. Clara and Rushka cannot be Link summoned except during main phase 2. That's it. That's everything Clara and Rushka does. It is an up pointing arrow with 0 attack. It's an Earth spellcaster. That's really bad. Just taking a look at Clara and Rushka on surface level, we are taking a monster that we normal summoned, sending it to the graveyard during main phase 2 by you to replace it with a 0 attack monster with an up pointing arrow, which is normally going to face to our opponent's side of the field. That actually, amusingly enough, will lock you out of your own Link monster zone because you're not able to summon something under Clara and Rushka. You have to replace it with another monster or Link climb with it, which is actually kind of where the value of it comes in, but there's actually a lot more that Clara and Rushka does. Surface level, Clara and Rushka is just an abysmal. We can't actually progress our plays during main phase 1 to maybe build up a board or Link climb with it during main phase 1 to move into the battle phase to then deal more damage, because this thing can only be summoned during main phase 2. So why is this card worthy of actually taking some praise and being okay? Upon its release, Clara and Rushka actually, surprisingly enough, saw some competitive play, and decks like Mech Knight Invoked, decks like 60 card Zombies could actually get a hand of it, and decks like ABC would also use Clara and Rushka. I don't think ABC is using it as much now because there's just better options, but upon this card's initial release, it actually saw quite a bit of surprising play, a lot more than people actually expected. And really, to understand why Clara and Rushka is such a good card, we have to take a look at what it allows to happen. Clara and Rushka is really just the epitome of a card that does nothing but makes everything possible. And I think the key with that is just what Link summoning is, which is sending monsters from the field to the graveyard to replace them with another monster, just because the summoning mechanic is so generic and open-ended, and that Clara and Rushka is such a generic and open-ended monster, it can allow a lot of monsters to be sent from the field to the graveyard without applying any effect. So when exactly does that become viable and good? Well, we have to take a look at a deck that actually uses Clara and Rushka a lot, and that deck is Mech Knight Invoked. I think most players can agree that ALEISTER the Invoked is a card that gets a lot more value when you use it from the graveyard in tandem with a card like Invocation. Banishing your ALEISTER from the field is definitely doable with Invocation, but the fact that you don't have to waste a monster and being able to banish ALEISTER from the graveyard just makes it that much better. Players have tried to take advantage of this by playing a lot of cards that can send ALEISTER from the field to the graveyard, get you some advantage, and then playing the Invocation when the ALEISTER's in your graveyard. Well, now we just have a generic way to send that ALEISTER from the field to the graveyard in the form of Clara and Rushka. A really cool thing about Mech Knight Invoked is that those cards that you would play to send ALEISTER from the field to the graveyard actually work with Clara and Rushka as well. So you can play cards like Spellbook of Knowledge or Wonder Wand to be able to get this Clara and Rushka off the field and draw you 2 cards while your ALEISTER's already in the graveyard. Which brings me to another point with Clara and Rushka, and that's that every deck that normal summons now has a generic way to be able to use a card like Spellbook of Knowledge or Wonder Wand, or actually, if you really want to get fancy with it, Secret Village of the Spellcasters, but that may not be the greatest option because this thing has 0 attack. The fact that Clara and Rushka is a spellcaster adds to the utility of the card, being able to synergize with those cards that I mentioned previously, but Clara and Rushka has a lot more value in other decks that don't really want to opt to play these cards like Spellbook of Knowledge or Wonder Wand. Take for instance a deck like 60 card zombies. Let me lay down a little scenario for you guys to kind of picture where Clara and Rushka could be helpful. Just for the sake of it, picture your board is empty and you have a Mizuki in hand and a UNI-ZOMBIE in your graveyard. You want to be able to get that UNI-ZOMBIE ideally to the field because UNI-ZOMBIE's an incredible card. Of course, you're going to have to opt to skip your battle phase, but one thing that is now possible is you're able to normal summon that Mizuki and then immediately send it to graveyard to make Clara and Rushka, and then use that Mizuki to get your UNI-ZOMBIE, which then gets a lot more plays rolling because that UNI-ZOMBIE can send a card like Mizuki or Gozuki or something from your deck to your graveyard. You get a lot more value out of that UNI-ZOMBIE, and since you had a way to get rid of that Mizuki from your hand, it definitely made it a lot easier. Of course, there's going to be a lot of other cards that can get that Mizuki from your hand to the graveyard, like Zombie Master or something like that, but you're not always going to have something like that. The fact that you have a Link monster in your extra deck gives you the ability to always trade a normal summon monster and send it to the graveyard. And the cool thing about Clara and Rushka is that since it is a Link monster, you have, well, a monster on the field when you send that Mizuki from the field to the graveyard. So if you can turn that Mizuki that you send from the field to the graveyard to, I don't know, 2 more monsters, you're able to make a Link 3. Using Clara and Rushka as a bridge to bigger Link monsters is definitely where I think this card holds a lot more of its value, rather than just a standalone card on its own. Clara and Rushka also proves to be a pretty okay card when we pair it with a card like Mind Control, being able to soak up any normal summon monster on our opponent's side of the field and then flip it immediately to a Clara and Rushka so they don't get it back to the end phase is a pretty powerful thing. If you think of a card like Inspector Border, which is one of the most powerful just plain normal summon monsters in the game that you would stick, being able to flip that into a Clara and Rushka rather than trying to find a different way around it might be one of the easier options. All of these points that I mentioned actually made Clara and Rushka a pretty okay card upon its release, enough to actually see play in some people's extra decks, which the fact that it saw any play in any extra deck is surprising enough for most people. This is a card that on surface level is just an absolute catastrophe, but because of the creativity of players as well as just the vast card pool we have in Yu-Gi-Oh! To be able to synergize with something as meaningless as this, it actually ended up being a pretty okay card. Clara and Rushka is just one of the many underrated and objectively terrible Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards that have stolen a space in the spotlight in a given meta or a given time in the game. If you guys want to see more cards like Clara and Rushka that somehow ended up being a-okay in Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, why is a card like Outstanding Dog Marone actually playable in the game, or was playable in the game? Well, you'd have to check out my channel to find out. You can find more cards like this under the playlist of This Awful Yu-Gi-Oh! Card Was Good, which you guys can actually stay updated with it if you subscribe to my channel while you're over there, which you should definitely do. I'm just saying. That being said, if you guys liked the video, be sure to like the video, thumbs up the video, especially if you enjoyed the video. If you did like the video, please do give it a big thumbs up, and just give it a big thumbs up anyways for thanking Doug for allowing me to upload on his channel, and I hope he has a great vacation. That being said, thank you guys for watching. I'll be sure to see you guys over at my channel, which is NimNim. That's down in the description below. See you guys there. Thanks for watching, guys. NimNim signing out.